How much longer will you let them break you? Enough. My wife Jessica and I had been married for 6 years when everything finally fell apart like a badly welded joint under pressure. When we first met at a backyard barbecue in the summer of 2018, I thought she was the most incredible woman I'd ever laid eyes on. She had this laugh that could cut through the noise of power tools and generators, auburn hair that caught fire in the afternoon sun streaming through the workshop windows. And she seemed genuinely interested in what I did for a living. Not the usual, "Oh, that's nice," when I told people I was an industrial welder at Titanium Manufacturing Solutions on Industrial Boulevard, just off Highway 34. Real questions about the work, the precision it required, the satisfaction of building something solid that would last decades. Questions about the different types of welding, the art of reading blueprints, the pride that comes from seeing a massive steel framework you helped create standing tall against the skyline. I made decent money, around 75 grand a year, lived a straightforward life in a blue-collar neighborhood called Riverside Heights. Nothing flashy, but honest work that put food on the table and kept the lights on. My 3-bedroom ranch house on Maple Street had a 2-car garage where I kept my tools organized and my paid-off Ford F-150 that had never let me down in 8 years of faithful service. She worked as an event coordinator for premier occasions downtown, planning high-end weddings and corporate events for people with more money than sense. Seemed ambitious, creative, full of energy and big dreams about moving up in the world. She talked about opening her own event planning business someday, about building a client base among the city's elite, about creating experiences that would be talked about for years. We got engaged 8 months later, after what felt like a storybook romance. Tied the knot the following spring in a ceremony that was mostly her work friends and their plus ones. My crew from Titanium Manufacturing showed up in their best shirts, looking slightly out of place among all the event planning people in their designer outfits, but they were there for me. Luis Hernandez, my welding partner, who could make 2 pieces of steel become one like he was performing surgery. Tony Ricci, the crane operator who never missed a Steelers game and always had a thermos of coffee that could wake the dead. Brad Mitchell, the shop foreman who'd taught me everything I knew about reading stress patterns in metal. Looking back now with the clarity that only comes after everything burns down and you're standing in the ashes, the warning signs were always there, flickering like a bad arc on a welding torch. I just chose to ignore them because I was in love, or thought I was. It started small, the way metal fatigue works its way through a structure over time. A comment here about my work clothes not being appropriate for her. Company functions. A suggestion there that I should lease something newer than my paid-off F-150, something that wouldn't embarrass her in front of her clients when they saw us together. Little jokes about how I didn't understand the finer things in life, how I was too practical, too focused on boring stuff like savings accounts and retirement planning instead of living in the moment. Comments about how her work friends' husbands drove BMWs and Mercedes, worked in offices with views, wore suits instead of steel-toed boots and hard hats covered in welding spatter. By year 3, those comments had gotten sharper, more frequent, and more public. She'd criticize my choice of restaurant in front of her friends, saying places like Applebee's or Outback Steakhouse were beneath the standards she was trying to maintain professionally. She wanted to eat at places where the wine list cost more than I made in a week, where you needed reservations months in advance, and the waiters looked down their noses at anyone who didn't know which fork to use for the appetizer course. When I explained that our combined income of $130 a year didn't exactly put us in that bracket, that we had a mortgage and car payments and retirement savings to think about, she'd accuse me of being cheap, of not supporting her career ambitions, of holding her back from the life she deserved because I was too scared to take risks, too comfortable with mediocrity. The money situation really started eating at me around that time, gnawing at my gut like acid through metal. We had joint checking and savings accounts like most married couples, but I started noticing money disappearing faster than it should have. My entire paycheck would go in every 2 weeks, and within days there'd be charges for hundreds of dollars that I couldn't account for. ATM withdrawals at locations I'd never been to, credit card charges at boutiques and spas that catered to women with trust funds. Jessica always had explanations ready, delivered with the kind of confidence that made you question your own memory. New outfits required for client meetings, she'd say. Designer pieces that were investments in her professional image. company dinners she had to pay for up front and get reimbursed later through expense reports, professional development courses that would help her move up to the next level, networking events where the entry fee was the cost of admission to a better future. I trusted her completely back then, believed in the dream she was selling, about building something bigger than ourselves. So I didn't dig too deep or demand to see receipts for everything. What I didn't know was that she'd been using Premier Occasions company credit card for personal expenses, charging her shopping trips and spa days as business expenses. Lunch dates with friends became client consultations. Shopping sprees at Nordstrom became vendor research trips. Weekend getaways became industry conference attendance. She was living like we were pulling down $250 a year, while I was the one actually paying our mortgage on the little ranch in Riverside Heights. The utilities that kept the lights on and the heat running, groceries every week, her car payment on a white Nissan Altima that she'd insisted we lease because image matters in her industry. Meanwhile, her entire salary of $55,000 seemed to vanish into designer handbags she posted on Instagram like trophies, weekly mani PDs that cost more than my lunch budget, expensive dinners with her girlfriends from work, where they'd split bottles of wine that cost more than my truck payment. Our relationship had become something I didn't recognize anymore, like looking at a weld that had been ground down and painted over, until you couldn't tell where the original metal ended and the repair began. We barely talked, except when she needed money or wanted me to fix something around the house. Conversations that used to flow like molten metal through a perfect seam had become stilted exchanges about schedules and expenses, and her latest frustrations with coworkers who didn't appreciate her vision. Our bedroom had been dead for months, maybe closer to a year if I was being honest with myself. She'd push me away whenever I tried to get close, saying she was tired from coordinating some high-profile wedding or stressed about landing a new corporate client. Always had excuses ready, like she kept them filed away in a mental cabinet marked reasons to avoid intimacy. Too tired, too stressed, too busy thinking about work, too worried about some event that was happening next week. But then I'd see her Instagram stories out at clubs with her work friends until 3 a.m, full of energy and life, dancing and laughing and posting photos with captions about living your best life and surrounding yourself with positive energy. Just never for me anymore. Never any of that spark, that vitality, that infectious joy that had drawn me to her like metal filings to a magnet in the first place. I felt like a ghost in my own house. An ATM with legs that occasionally got lectured about not being sophisticated enough for her evolving tastes. Someone whose primary function was to deposit paychecks and fix leaky faucets and keep the lights on, while she built whatever new version of herself she thought would finally make her happy. A supporting actor in my own marriage, watching my wife perform her life for an audience that didn't include me. The guys at work started noticing the change in me too. Luis would ask if everything was okay when I'd stand staring at a blueprint for 10 minutes without saying a word. Tony stopped inviting me to grab beers after shift because I'd turned him down so many times, claiming I needed to get home to Jessica, when the truth was, I dreaded walking through that front door. Brad, who'd been through his own messy divorce 5 years earlier, would give me these knowing looks across the shop floor like he could read the story written in the tension across my shoulders. But the real breaking point, the moment that changed everything like a torch cutting through steel, came 2 weeks before her 31st birthday last September. She told me about this dinner she was planning with her work crew at Applebee's on Highway 34. Made it sound like I was actually invited as her husband, not just an afterthought or obligation she had to drag along to maintain appearances. She even touched my shoulder the way she used to when we were dating, back when her touch meant something other than a setup for asking for money or a prelude to criticism about my wardrobe choices. Said it would mean a lot to her if I came, that she wanted me there to celebrate with her closest friends, that it wouldn't be the same without me. The words sounded right, had the rhythm of sincerity, but something in her eyes didn't quite match what was coming out of her mouth. I said yes immediately because I was still trying to save our marriage, still hoping against hope that we could somehow fix whatever had broken between us, like a stress fracture that keeps spreading through metal until the whole structure fails. Still believing that maybe this dinner would be different, that maybe she'd remember why she fell in love with a welder from Riverside Heights in the first place. Then, one afternoon, about a week before the dinner, I came home early from titanium manufacturing. We'd finished installing the framework for a new office building downtown, ahead of schedule, and Brad let the crew knock off at 2 instead of staying until 6. The autumn air was crisp and clean, and I was actually looking forward to surprising Jessica with some extra time together, maybe suggesting we take a walk around the neighborhood or drive out to Miller's Lake like we used to do when we were dating. As I walked into our house on Maple Street, the living room felt unusually quiet. No music playing, no television noise, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of water running upstairs. Jessica was in the shower, and her phone was buzzing insistently on the kitchen counter like an angry wasp trapped against a window. The screen lit up with a text notification from someone named Austin Rivers, and something about the preview text made my stomach clench. I shouldn't have looked. I know that now, and I knew it then. But something made me glance down at that glowing screen, some instinct that had been developing over months of feeling like a stranger in my own marriage. What I saw made my blood run cold, like stepping outside in January without a coat. Can't wait to hit the clubs tomorrow night. Your husband doesn't need to know everything, right? My hands started shaking like I was trying to hold a welding torch in a windstorm. I picked up the phone and scrolled through their conversation, each message hitting me like a hammer blow to the chest. Months of messages between my wife and this Austin Rivers character, her so-called best friend, who was apparently a personal trainer at some upscale gym downtown called Elite Fitness on Meridian Avenue. Messages about how boring I was, how I was holding her back from living her best life, how I didn't understand her ambitions or appreciate the finer things that made life worth living, how she deserved better than a blue-collar guy who worked with his hands for a living, who was content with simple pleasures like hockey games and barbecues and quiet evenings at home, how Austin understood her in ways I never could, how he encouraged her dreams instead of questioning her spending, how he made her feel alive again. The conversation went back months, maybe longer. Austin sending her motivational quotes about not settling for mediocrity, about surrounding yourself with people who elevate your energy, about cutting dead weight from your life to make room for growth and possibility. Jessica responding with heart emojis and messages about feeling understood for the first time in years, about realizing she'd been living smaller than she was meant to live. And then I saw it, the message that stopped my heart completely and made me understand that my marriage had been over for longer than I'd realized. It was from 3 days earlier, right after one of our few attempts at conversation, that had ended with her storming out to meet friends for drinks. If he has a problem with my life, then he can just leave. I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not for a guy who thinks Applebee's is fine dining. Austin, you get me in ways he never could. When we're out at the clubs, I feel like myself again, like the woman I was before I settled for safe and boring. I stood there in my own kitchen, reading my wife dismiss our entire marriage like it was a bad Yelp review, like 6 years of building a life together was just a mistake she'd made in her 20s before she knew better. Reading her talk about this Austin character like he was already her replacement, just waiting in the wings for me to get the hint and disappear. The phone felt heavy in my hands, like it was made of lead instead of plastic and glass. And in that moment, something fundamental shifted inside me. Not broke, because I'd been breaking for a while now, piece by piece like metal under constant stress. This was different. This was clarity, cutting through years of self-doubt and wondering if I was being too sensitive, if I was imagining problems that weren't really there. Finally, after months of feeling like I was losing my mind, I had proof that my instincts had been right all along. I scrolled further back through their conversation, my jaw clenching tighter with each exchange. Austin wasn't just some innocent friend offering emotional support. He was actively encouraging her to leave me, feeding her lines about deserving better, about not wasting her prime years on someone who couldn't appreciate her true worth. Messages about how attractive she was, how any man would be lucky to have her, how she shouldn't let fear of change keep her trapped in a relationship that was beneath her standards. The water stopped running upstairs, and I heard Jessica moving around in the bedroom. I quickly put her phone back exactly where I'd found it and walked outside to my truck, my mind racing like an engine running too hot. I sat there in my driveway for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel and trying to process what I'd just discovered. My wife wasn't just unhappy with our marriage. She had already checked out emotionally and was actively planning her exit strategy with another man. That evening, Jessica came downstairs dressed for another night out, hair and makeup done like she was going to a photo shoot. She kissed my cheek absently and said she was meeting the girls from work for drinks at some new cocktail bar downtown. No invitation for me to join, no suggestion that maybe we could spend an evening together for once. Just information delivered like a weather report before she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I watched through the living room window as a black BMW pulled into our driveway. Austin Rivers himself, coming to pick up my wife for what I now knew wasn't just an innocent night out with friends. He was tall and lean, the kind of guy who probably spent 2 hours a day at the gym and took selfies of his abs for Instagram, wearing designer clothes that cost more than I made in a week, driving a car that screams success and sophistication. Jessica practically skipped to his car, her whole demeanor changing the moment she saw him. The energy, the smile, the animated gestures as they talked through his open window. All the things that had been missing from our interactions for months. All the warmth and excitement that I thought had just disappeared from her personality. It hadn't disappeared at all. She'd just been saving it for someone else. So I spent the next week preparing. Not emotionally, because I was way past that point already. Practically, methodically, like planning a complex welding project where every measurement had to be perfect or the whole structure would fail. I made careful phone calls during lunch breaks at Titanium Manufacturing, sitting in my F-150 in the parking lot, behind the main building where nobody could overhear. I called my bank and opened a new checking account in just my name, slowly transferring money from our joint account in amounts small enough not to trigger immediate suspicion. I gathered evidence of Jessica's company credit card abuse, printing out statements that I accessed through her laptop when she left it open on the kitchen table, screenshots of her Instagram posts showing expensive dinners and shopping trips that coincided perfectly with her fake expense reports. I also made copies of all those text messages with Austin, using my phone to photograph her screen whenever she left it. Unattended, screenshots of every conversation where she talked about me like I was some kind of burden she was carrying around. Every message where Austin encouraged her to pursue happiness outside our marriage. Every heart emoji and flirty comment that proved this was more than just friendship. The pattern was undeniable when you laid it all out like blueprints on a workbench. The financial deception going back almost 2 years. The emotional affair that had probably been building for months before it got physical. The contempt and disrespect that she'd been hiding behind fake smiles and rehearsed explanations. Luis noticed the change in my demeanor around day 3 of my preparation phase. We were installing support beams for a new warehouse expansion, work that required absolute precision and focus, but I was moving through the tasks with a calm efficiency that surprised even me. "You seem different, Hermano," he said during our lunch break, unwrapping a sandwich his wife had made. "More focused, like you figured something out that's been bothering you." I just smiled and told him I was working through some things at home, which was true enough. Tony made similar observations, commenting that I seemed more like my old self, the guy who used to crack jokes and talk about weekend plans instead of checking my phone every 5 minutes and looking like someone had died. The truth was, I felt more like myself than I had in years. For the first time since this marriage started falling apart, I wasn't the one trying to fix everything. Wasn't the one making excuses or adjusting my behavior to accommodate Jessica's changing demands. I had a plan, and I was working that plan with the same methodical precision I brought to every welding project. I consulted with James Patterson, an attorney who'd handled Brad's divorce and came highly recommended by several guys at the plant who'd been through similar situations. James was sharp, professional, and understood exactly what I was up against. He reviewed the evidence I'd gathered, nodded approvingly at my documentation, and explained the process in terms that made sense. "Financial fraud is serious," he said, flipping through printouts of Jessica's expense reports. "Company credit card abuse, falsifying business expenses, using corporate funds for personal use. That's not just grounds for termination. Depending on the amounts involved, it could be criminal charges." We calculated the total over the past 18 months. $23,000 of personal expenses charged to premier occasions as business costs. Spa treatments listed as client meetings. Shopping sprees categorized as vendor research. Weekend trips with Austin reported as industry conference attendance. A systematic pattern of fraud that showed clear intent to deceive. "The text messages are devastating in a divorce context," James continued. "Emotional affairs, planning to leave the marriage, expressing contempt for the spouse. This isn't a case where you'll have to split everything 50-50. We can make a very strong argument that she's been acting in bad faith throughout the marriage. I left his office feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Confidence. Not the fake confidence that comes from pretending everything is fine, but real confidence born from having a clear picture of reality and a plan to deal with it. The night of the birthday dinner finally arrived, like the completion of a long, complex project, where every piece had to fit perfectly. Applebee's on Highway 34, one of those chain restaurants with $29 steaks and 2-for-1 appetizer specials. The kind of place where working people could afford to celebrate without taking out a second mortgage or pretending to understand wine pairings that cost more than their monthly car insurance. Jessica and her crew were already seated at a large round table near the windows when I arrived at 7:30 sharp, my truck parked facing the exit in case I needed to make a quick getaway. The entire Premier Occasions team was there, dressed like they were attending some charity gala instead of a casual dinner at a family restaurant. Amber Wells, the corporate events manager who talked about disrupting the industry like she was Steve Jobs, instead of someone who organized office Christmas parties. She was wearing what looked like a $1,000 dress to eat loaded potato skins. Crystal Martinez, the wedding coordinator, who'd been divorced twice and treated relationships like business transactions, always calculating costs and benefits with cold precision. Tiffany Chen, who ran social media for the company and took selfies with everything she ate, probably already planning which angles would get the most likes on her Instagram story. I sat down at the end of the table, the seat furthest from Jessica, and immediately felt the familiar chill of being tolerated rather than welcomed. Nobody really acknowledged my arrival, except for polite nods and forced smiles. The conversation continued around me like I was a piece of furniture that had been there all along. They were discussing some high-profile wedding they'd coordinated the previous weekend, something involving a minor celebrity, and enough flowers to stock a small garden center. Jessica was animated in a way I rarely saw at home anymore, gesturing with her wine glass and laughing at stories that apparently weren't funny enough to share with her husband. She looked beautiful, radiant even, the way she used to look when she talked about our future together. When the server came around taking orders, Jessica and her friends ordered without hesitation whatsoever. Ribeye steaks, loaded potato skins, premium cocktails that cost $12 each. The server, a young guy probably working his way through college, worked his way around the table efficiently, writing everything down on his little pad with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this thousands of times. When he got to me, Jessica waved him off without even looking in my direction, exactly like I'd overheard her planning with Austin the week before. "He's fine," she said dismissively, taking a sip of her Cosmopolitan. "Just water for him. He's not really eating tonight." The server glanced at me with this look of uncomfortable recognition, like this wasn't the first time he'd witnessed this exact scenario play out in his section. I just nodded calmly and sat back in my chair, checking my watch. 8:15. Right on schedule for what I'd set in motion 3 hours earlier. For the next hour and a half, I watched these women eat and drink and laugh while I sat there with nothing in front of me except a water glass that nobody bothered to refill. They made jokes about me right to my face, like I was invisible or too stupid to understand what they were really saying. Crystal wondered out loud how Jessica managed to put up with someone so unambitious day after day, suggesting with fake psychological authority that I probably had some kind of learned helplessness or fear of success that kept me trapped in blue-collar mediocrity. Amber gave a whole speech about how successful people need to surround themselves with other successful people, how energy is contagious and you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. Tiffany posted photos of her food while making comments about how some people just don't understand what it means to invest in experiences instead of just existing. She held up her phone to get the perfect angle of her steak, probably adding hashtags about living your best life and surrounding yourself with positive energy. I just smiled politely through it all and said, "Good to know, really good to know." But what none of them knew, what they couldn't possibly have imagined as they laughed and ate and performed their little show, was that while we were sitting there, 3 things were happening simultaneously across town that would change everything. First, Jessica's company credit card was being declined at every location she'd tried to use it over the past week. I had sent detailed documentation of her personal charges to Premier Occasion's accounting department that morning, along with screenshots of her Instagram posts proving that her supposed business expenses were actually personal shopping trips and social outings. The accounting department had moved quickly, freezing the card pending investigation and scheduling a meeting with Jessica for first thing Monday morning. Second, her white Nissan Altima was being repossessed from our driveway at home. Not from the restaurant parking lot, where it would have caused an immediate scene in front of her friends and ruined her carefully constructed image, but from home, where she'd left it when Amber picked her up in her expensive BMW. I'd called the leasing company that afternoon and informed them that I was removing myself as co-signer due to impending divorce proceedings. Without my income and credit score backing the lease, and with Jessica's actual credit score hovering around 580, thanks to several maxed out store cards, the repo was automatic. Third, Austin Rivers was having a very interesting conversation with Luis's brother Miguel, who worked in private security and specialized in having polite but memorable conversations with men who forgot about boundaries and respect. I'd hired Miguel that morning, providing him with screenshots of Austin's text messages encouraging my wife to leave her marriage. Professional, intimidating, the kind of conversation that makes personal trainers reconsider their career choices and their approach to married women. Around 9 o'clock, as they were talking about ordering dessert and making plans to hit some trendy cocktail bar downtown, I calmly asked the server for the check. The confusion on their faces was absolutely priceless, worth every second of sitting there hungry and ignored. Jessica actually stopped mid-sentence and asked what I thought I was doing, her voice sharp with warning and confusion. "I'd like to see the full bill," I said clearly, looking directly at the server and ignoring Jessica completely. "For the entire table, everything that's been ordered tonight." The server nodded professionally and disappeared toward the kitchen, probably grateful to escape the tension that was building, like pressure in a boiler about to blow. When he returned with the leather folder a few minutes later, he placed it directly in front of me with both hands. I opened it slowly and deliberately, making sure everyone could see exactly what I was doing. The total came to $847, 5 ribeye steaks at $29 each, premium cocktails, loaded appetizers, desserts they'd already ordered but hadn't touched yet. I pulled out my credit card, the one I'd kept separate for emergencies, and placed it carefully on top of the check. Then I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the floor like a welding torch cutting through silence. "I'm going to pay this bill," I said calmly, looking directly at Jessica, while everyone else watched in stunned silence. "The full amount, including a 20% tip for excellent service. But before this card gets run, I need everyone at this table to understand something very clearly." Jessica's face was turning red with embarrassment and anger. "Caleb, sit down right now. You're embarrassing yourself in front of everyone." Her voice carried that sharp edge I'd become so familiar with, the tone that used to make me back down and apologize for existing. "No," I said quietly but firmly. "I'm really not." Instead of explaining myself, I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I'd prepared so carefully. "This is the last time I will ever pay for anything that benefits you, Jessica. The last dinner, the last drink, the last anything. Consider this my birthday gift. To you. Clarity." I handed my phone to Crystal, who was sitting closest to me. "Read it," I said, "all of it, out loud, so everyone can hear what my wife really thinks about our marriage." Crystal's eyes went wide as she scrolled through the text conversations with Austin Rivers. Her face went pale as she read Jessica's words about being held back by a blue-collar husband, about deserving better than someone who worked with his hands for a living. The silence that followed was profound and heavy, like the moment after a perfect weld when the metal is still glowing, but the work is done. Other diners at nearby tables had stopped talking, sensing the drama unfolding like a live performance they'd accidentally wandered into. Jessica's face went completely white, then flushed deep red with rage and humiliation. Amber looked like she'd been physically slapped across the face. Tiffany had stopped taking photos, her phone forgotten in her hands. Crystal was still staring at my phone screen, reading message after message of contempt and betrayal. Austin's encouragement to leave her boring husband, plans for nights out that didn't include wedding rings or marriage vows. "So, yes," I continued calmly, putting my phone back in my pocket. "I'll pay for your birthday dinner, every ridiculous overpriced bite of it. Consider it compensation for the show you've been putting on behind my back. But we're done here, completely and totally done. I looked at the server, who was standing there awkwardly holding my credit card. Run the card and add another 100 to the tip. You've earned it dealing with this table all night. Then I turned and walked out of that Applebee's, out into the cool September evening that felt like freedom itself, like stepping out of a welding booth and breathing clean air again. Behind me, I could hear Jessica calling my name desperately, could hear Amber's voice rising in fury, could hear the entire table erupting in complete chaos and shouting. But I was already gone, walking toward my F-150 in the parking lot, where I deliberately parked facing the exit for exactly this moment. The next few weeks were a blur of legal maneuvering and controlled demolition of our shared life together. The divorce papers were filed the very next morning by James Patterson at 9 o'clock sharp. Jessica was served at Amber's apartment where she'd been staying since discovering her car had been repossessed and her credit cards were frozen. According to the process server, she started screaming the moment she saw the official papers. But Jessica wasn't going down without a fight. She took to social media with absolute vengeance, posting long emotional captions about being financially abused, about having her car stolen and her credit destroyed without warning. She created a GoFundMe page asking for donations to help her rebuild her life, claiming I'd left her completely destitute and unable to afford basic necessities. Within 24 hours, she'd raised over $3,000 from people who believed her story without asking questions. Her Instagram post got hundreds of comments calling me a monster, telling her to stay strong, that she deserved so much better. But the truth eventually started coming out, despite her aggressive social media campaign. The investigation into her expense fraud at premier occasions revealed systematic theft over 18 months. The district attorney filed criminal charges within a week, embezzlement and falsifying business documents, both felonies given the amount and duration. She was arrested on a Tuesday morning, fingerprinted and photographed, the whole humiliating process. The local news picked up the story because by then our divorce had gone viral. Videos of the restaurant confrontation shared across multiple platforms. Suddenly, the woman painting herself as a victim was facing serious criminal charges for actual documented fraud. Her fundraising page was shut down for terms of service violations. All donations refunded automatically. The mediation was straightforward once we sat down with lawyers. I had overwhelming evidence, bank statements showing I'd paid every bill for 6 years, documentation of her fraud, recordings of her contempt. We settled on a 60-40 split in my favor. She got $12 grand as her share of the house equity, no alimony. Her credit card debt, all $25,000 of it, remained her responsibility. I moved into a small apartment on Riverside Drive, nothing fancy but entirely mine. Adopted a German Shepherd mix named Bull from the shelter. Started playing recreational hockey again with guys from various trades. Met Madison Cooper, a registered nurse, at Miller's Hardware while buying garden supplies. Coffee dates became hiking trips, became quiet dinners where we talked about real things. For the first time in years, I'm not apologizing for who I am or what I do for a living. Just living authentically, building something real on a foundation of truth and mutual respect. Sometimes I wonder about Jessica, hope she learned something, but mostly I don't think about her anymore. My story isn't about her. It's about finding my voice, walking away from something killing me slowly, learning that real love doesn't make you smaller. It's about discovering that being a skilled tradesman isn't something to be ashamed of, but something to take pride in. That on the other side of an ending is a beginning full of possibility. And that realization, that deep acceptance of my own worth, exactly as I am, that's everything I needed all along.